everyone, welcome back. This is Joe, Data Science Building Blocks. Today is an exciting day because we're going to really dive into Power BI. We're going to focus on sourcing data, so the MTCars data set in Power BI, and then doing some modeling and creating some very basic visuals. I want to make it clear that the goal of this is not to make you a Power BI expert, although this will get pretty involved at times. And in previous videos, it wasn't to make you an Excel expert or an R expert or even a data scientist. The goal of this series is really just to help you familiarize yourself with all of these tools and to teach you the very basics of what I know to help you build a foundation. That's really it. And then you can branch out from here if you want to dive into any specific topics like R specifically or something like that, but this is just to get the wheels turning and get you off and running. So today we will start right here on this site. You might remember it. I'll link to it in the notes. If you just Google MTCars columns, it's the second link or so that pops up, and this gives you a little rundown of what we're looking at in the data set. So if you don't know what 0 and 1 mean in your columns, this tells you that 0 is automatic and 1 is manual. This will make more sense as we go on. So from here, go to your desktop if you have that Power BI desktop shortcut from your install. If you don't, in Windows you can probably just search Power BI and it should pop up for you right here, this app. And once that loads, we will pull in the MTCars dataset. After this opens, you'll see a screen that looks like this. Click on the already have a Power BI account. Even though you probably don't, you can X out of the sign in, and now we're just working in the desktop, right? So we can't actually publish this out to Power BI or leverage any of the premium functionality that you have to pay for. So I encourage you to explore that. If you work at a company that uses Power BI, you might be familiar. If not though, we'll just focus here on the desktop and we'll build some visuals and we'll just save it as a file on our computer rather than actually publish it out to a site where we can automatically refresh it and things like that. So first step, get data. It's always the first step. I think I mentioned this in the last video. And we will focus on the very basic way to pull in data from our local machine, from a local file, and that's just through Excel or through a CSV file. There are various other connectors out here, as you can see. Google BigQuery, Snowflake, Essbase. This is everything if you're on the All tab here of Get Data. Down here you'll see Power BI data sets and data flows. These are really premium features. So I actually work with Power BI in my job, and we have everything in data flows out on the Power BI service. We source everything from SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server. Pull it into data flows, they're automatically refreshing, and then we pull in information into our PBIX file, which is what we have open right here on Power BI desktop, and we'll publish out from there. But you can pull in files from your local machine, and you'll just have to refresh them manually. So we'll do that today. I think our MTCars file is a CSV, if I'm not mistaken, so I'll connect to the CSV, and we can navigate out to our desktop or wherever you have your folder saved under DSBB, and it doesn't look like, so if I click all files, it doesn't look like I have MTCars CSV saved here, but I believe I can just click this DSBB2. It's saved on one of the tabs right here. So you can see the options. Table 2, if I click table 2, okay, this is perfect. So I can see everything I have here in table 2, which is great. So if I didn't select table 2, if I did just DSBB2 MTCars, it's pretty much the same thing, but we'll go with the table and we'll click transform data. So this will bring you to the edit query section. If you've used Power Query in Excel, it's going to look pretty much exactly the same. So you can transform data here, remove duplicates, add delete columns, write M code to do various other calculations on the columns, If you had multiple queries, you can append them, merge them. A lot of functionality in here, and you can see all of your applied steps over to the right. First thing I want to do is delete this AM description, because I'm going to show you how to replace this column in a more efficient way through modeling. So make this one of your query steps, remove, just right click and remove the column. And now we're back to the very basic, what the MTCars data set would look like if we did nothing to it and just pulled it into Power BI. So we can rename this MTCars and just click close and apply. We don't have to worry about all of this other stuff on the ribbon just yet. Let's just close and apply, and this completes our query. We've now sourced our data, we've brought it into Power BI, and we can use it. So I stopped recording there for a second. There was a little pop-up that said 32 rows loaded, and that's how many rows we have in this MTCars table. So it looks like everything has been brought in successfully. You can see all of the columns here. You see this little summation icon next to some of them. Car doesn't have it because of its data type, right? It's a string, it's a text. So if I just drag car into this canvas, obviously we can't sum up text. But everything else is actually a number, and Power BI has recognized that data type. So if I pull in cylinders, for example, it's automatically just going to group these by car and sum up the cylinders. We have unique cars here in this case, so we don't have to worry about having two separate cars and them summing up the cylinders and this not making sense. But if we had Fiat 128 twice, for example, you might see 8 cylinders here, which would not be good. But we know that car is the primary key and it's all unique, so in theory you can just create the whole data set again by clicking every single one of these, and the table will look exactly like what you saw when you brought it in the first place. I'm going to delete this right now, and we're going to focus on these other two ribbon tabs over here. So I call this is your blank canvas, this is your report tab, and this is your data tab, or the table tab I like to call it, because you can view all the tables. And this is your modeling. This is where you actually do all the modeling, which we can't do right now because we only have one table. So if I go to look at the table, here is a good place to see exactly what you brought in. You can actually use table tools to do new columns and new table here. You can do it in the edit query step or here in the table step. It'll really depend on your use case. Best practice would be to avoid adding a column in either step if you can do it within a measure. We'll get there eventually. So right now, rather than say with an if statement, if our manual gear is a 1 or a 0, give us automatic or stick shift or manual. We can achieve this by adding some more data, and this is the very basic way to do it, is just click enter data. This will automatically create a new query for you, and we can just do it ourselves here. So we can call this gear and refer back to our site. Oh, actually it's AM that we want to call it here. So 0 is automatic and 1 is manual. So let's go back, we'll call this AM, we'll do 0 and 1 automatic and manual, right? Just to double check, yeah, 1's manual, 0 is automatic. So I accidentally created a row 3, so I'll delete that, and we can call this AM description. I'll just use snake case to name the column. And here I want to call this AM key just to avoid confusion, since we already have an AM and MTCars, although it's not a bad thing to name it exactly the same in another table, especially if you're doing auto modeling and it will recognize the relationship. So I'll just call it AM key for now, and we can call the table AM key as well. So let's load that. And it shouldn't take long. It's a static table. It will never change. This is a perfectly acceptable way to enter this data. And now if I go to the modeling tab, if you've ever worked with Microsoft Access before, this will look pretty similar. and it actually was smart enough to do the modeling for us. But say it wasn't. If I right click this little relationship here and delete it, say it just didn't create that relationship automatically, I know that this is a foreign key on the MTCars dataset or table. So you'll have repeating zeros, you'll have repeating ones, whatever the car is, it'll have a 0 or 1 if it's manual or automatic. But here, AM key is actually unique. It's the primary key on this table. There's only 1 1 and 1 0. So if I drag it and create the relationship, Power BI will recognize that. You see a 1 on this side and a little star on this side. So that's a 1 to many relationship, or a many to 1 relationship if you're looking at it this way. And it's generally best practice to put your main fact table right in the middle. So the main table that you're working with is MTCars, and then all of the description tables around it to create this star schema. And it's generally best practice to have that dimension table, or this key table that we've created, filter the main table in the middle. So that's what this little arrow is. It's your directional filter. This table filters this table. To actually show you what that looks like, if we just bring in a few columns here, like the AM and the car, I'm dragging all this in from your MTCars, and let's just bring in horsepower just to create a basic table. And it looks like it's trying to create a graph here. So click this table visual if it's selecting a bar chart. We just want to create a table, or a matrix will work too. If you create a matrix though, you'll have to put everything in rows, which is equally fine, but it will do this grouping for you, and then you'll have to use this functionality to drill down. So just do the table for now. So if we do that, now we can click off of that visual, add a little slicer. So this visual here, and we can pull in the description. So just drag it or click it, click the little checkbox, and now you'll see automatic or manual. So remember, our filter direction is the key table to the main MTCars fact table. So if I click manual, it should filter this table, and you should see all 1s, and you do in that AM column. If you select automatic, you'll see all 0s. So that's kind of nice. And now our users, whoever we're publishing this to, or if you are the end user for this, you will know, what's what just by clicking this filter. And what's even nicer is you don't ever have to use the 1s and 0s again if you don't want to. I mean, you can just get rid of this entirely, have it not be part of the visual after you test that it works, or since it's related, you can just drag the description itself into the mix, and you'll see that Power BI is smart enough to make that work. Let's hit this drop down here and just click drop down. So now it's a little cleaner. We can shrink this a bit, move it to the top, just do some cleanup here, and you'll see the little lines as you drag things and try to align your visuals together. And by the way, if you didn't want to call this AM description, if you wanted to just call it like manual or automatic, you can do that. You can rename columns as you see fit. So what else do we have on the site? We also can see that we have V-shaped. 0 is V-shaped for engine and 1 is straight, so we can add a VS key as well. So let's go ahead and do that. If we enter data, we'll do this the exact same way as we just did the manual or automatic. So VS key is the name of the table and the first name of the column. Let's stay consistent in the way that we do this, and we can do VS description. And same thing, 0 and 1. And if we go back, 0 is V-shaped and 1 is straight. So V-shaped, I just copy and pasted that in, and 1 is straight. And if you click enter, it'll make another row. So again, I'm going to delete that. I did that accidentally. And right click, or single left click, load. You'll see it's applying the changes, detecting relationships. So you have to be careful with this if you have bigger, more complex data sets. I keep saying data sets. It's worth noting that when I brought in MTCars, that was the full data set. But now, when I say data set, it's everything. It's all the tables, all the relationships. If I were to publish this out to a Power BI Premium workspace, it would generate a report and a data set, and this full file would be your data set. So it looks like, just a quick check here, we've got the same thing happening where the key is filtering your VS key on this side, and that's exactly what we want in this case. So we can create another slicer if we want, or we can do these filters off to the side. So actually, let's practice that. So if I do VS key on this side, I'll do description from that table, filter on just this page. So now I can filter on straight or V-shaped. So if you actually want to see this work, you can pull in your VS key from this table, and why don't we pull in our AM key as well from the other dimension table. We'll X out the others, and this is actually automatically doing a count. We don't want that, so we can click that down caret and do don't summarize. Okay, so now we just have the car and all of the keys, and let's bring in the descriptions as well, also from the dimension tables, the key tables that we just made. So here's your AM description, here's your VS description, and now you can see your AM key description, VS key, VS description. So filtering on manual, you see we got that there, and you can see you have some straight and V-shaped, but if you use your filter over here and just do straight, now you've used both of these filters in two different ways to filter your visual over here. And so we just have one basic visual. That's all I want to focus on today. Some quick styling things. If you go to this format section, you have to be selected on the visual itself. You can change up the style a little bit. There's various other things you can do here, like conditional formatting and such, but just to make this a little more pretty here before we take off for the day, pick one you like and save it, and then we will see you in the next one. I'm going to go with condensed, save, and I'll put this in that same folder on my desktop, and just call it DSBB Power BI. All right, looks good. Catch you in the next one.